talk about this image a lot on the planes, but what does this image represent to each of you? What does this mean?
Take care of yourself. Take care of yourself first, then your child.
Yes, so take care of yourself before taking care of others, or put your mask on before helping others. That's the exact same way we want to be talking about self-care. How is it expected for you to take care of all the different aspects of your life when we aren't actually taking care of ourselves first? So this is a lot of how we'll be talking about self-care today, of really the importance and value in you recognizing self-care for you before you help everybody else or do all the other things you need to do on a daily basis. I think this image also can represent the importance of modeling. When we model positive self-care habits, our kids are watching, they pay attention, they recognize when we do those habits and what they look like. And so that's something else we want to keep in mind of what our self-care habits are, what our kids are noticing and doing, and how a lot of times they're going to pick up on those habits and implement those as well. So we'll keep that in mind as we go. So we all know that we're juggling a million different things every single day, but what are some of the things you are constantly juggling of why it would be important for you to engage in self-care? Any ideas of what are you dealing with every day?
Your job, your child, your spouse, your food.
Your dog, food. What budget you said? Is that what you said? Budget? Yes. So people and jobs and money, relationships. Anything else? School, yes. School is a big one. Friendships, activities, sports, hobbies. We have things that you could spend all night listing all the little things that you are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Relationships is a big one, whether that's with family or friends, people you care about. Anytime you take on something new, so if you started a new position or are doing a new hobby or part of a new club or something new in your life is going on, we know there's a lot of anxieties and stressors that come with that. I think finances, as you mentioned with budget, doesn't matter where you stand financially, this is always something that's on our minds. We also are always thinking about the future of what do I need to get done, what am I doing this weekend, what do I have to prepare for next week. With the same sense, we also are always dwelling on the past. Why did I send that text message or email or have that conversation with that person? We also know that when we lose things in our life, that has a huge impact, whether we no longer have this friendship or relationship that was meaningful, or we actually lose somebody close to us and go through that death and the grieving of that. And then just being people, so walking dogs or going grocery shopping or doing laundry. There's just constant things that we are juggling every single day that is really weighing on us. It takes a lot out of us. And so usually we are juggling all this and our self-care is the first thing out the door. So when things get really tough, we tend to say, I'm not gonna work out, or I can't do dinner with my friends anymore, or I can't do these walks that I used to do every morning. So we always put self-care on the sidelines when things get stressful, and yet those are the times that we need self-care the most. And as Americans, unfortunately, we aren't great at taking care of ourselves as a whole. We know that 1 in 5 of us struggles with some kind of mental health condition. We also know that about 3/4 of us don't eat the recommended fruits and veggies that we should be eating. About half of us don't go to a dentist within any given year. About 80% of us don't exercise the amount that's recommended as well. We also know that about 22 million Americans struggle with substance abuse, and suicide is one of our leading causes of death in the US. So we aren't, as a whole, doing a great job of taking care of ourselves, and yet this is super important for us to function every single day. So when we talk about self-care today, there's a million different ways that you can define self-care, the value of it, what it means, but we're gonna talk about it in a very simple sense, in that it is the intentional action to care for yourself. So really simple, not complex at all, but it's really important that we are taking that intentional action to talk about it. And today we're gonna be talking about it in these 6 different areas. So we have these areas that we want to be focusing on in our self-care. Ideally, we're well-rounded in these. I guarantee 90% of us, 99% of us are not. But the idea is that we can start to pull in some of these areas and get an idea of how we can improve in certain areas we may be lacking in, and then also really seeing which areas we really value and pay a lot of attention to. So looking at this list, let's start with physical. What are some examples of what physical self-care could look like. Yeah. Working out. Perfect. It's a great one. Yeah. Sleep, absolutely.
Personal hygiene.
Hygiene, yes. Anything else? One more that's pretty important, yeah. Nutrition, yes. So eating as well. So this category is usually the easiest for us because it's what we think of when we think of self-care. Our bodies and the way that we feed it or that we exercise or sleep, all of that's really important. But we also have these other ones, so psychological. So this is taking care of your mind. What are some self-care things you could think of that would fall into psychological self-care? Any ideas? Yeah.
Well, if you're in a really stressful situation, try to get some space between it, whether that's a family situation, maybe a work situation. That's not always easy, but maybe you just need a weekend away from the spouse or something.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe not.
No,
They need a weekend away from me, I don't know.
Right. That's exactly it. So taking kind of mental breaks, however that looks like. So if it's getting away from your family for a little bit, that could be part of it. Or maybe it's, I need to be surrounded by people that I care about because work is weighing really heavy on me. So I need people I care about. But yeah, giving yourself some space to, within your mind, however that may look, to help you with whatever stressful issues are going on. Anything else? Yeah. Meditation, that's a great one, absolutely. Sports? Yeah, absolutely. So in engaging in activities, yeah. Yeah, so if it makes sense for you, speaking to somebody about this, whether it's a counselor or people you're really close to in your life. Other things that can fall into this is engaging in non-work hobbies. You mentioned sports, things that you enjoy doing, reading, journaling, relaxing, binge watching shows, listening to music, things that just help us relax our mind, that we enjoy to do to take off those stressors that we're kind of constantly reeling in our heads. What about emotional self-care? What could fall under emotional self-care? This one's always tough. Yeah?
Maybe like playing with your dog and cat.
Yeah, so doing things that kind of, things that you could enjoy that can bring up emotions for you. So this is the ability for us to express our emotions no matter what they are. So playing with a dog or a cat can bring us a lot of joy and happiness. So that's absolutely something that could fall into that. What was that? Writing a letter, yeah, absolutely. So it could be writing a letter to express your gratitude for somebody or your rage towards somebody or just emotions that you feel towards somebody or something that's going on in your life or something that's going on in the world. Anything else? This is just really allowing ourselves, and this can look a lot of different ways, but allowing ourselves to express emotions that make sense for us. So if we are feeling like we need to cry, allowing ourselves to cry. If we're really angry, allowing ourselves to express that anger in a productive way. But finding ways we can do this. For some, it's watching movies or rewatching movies or being around people or having comfortable spaces or items in their life that can really help promote these instead of us really bottling up our emotions, which we're fabulous at doing as humans. So just allowing ourselves to be in places and situations that allow us to express our emotions. What about spiritual self-care? What could fall under this? Yeah.
Praying or meditating.
Absolutely. So praying or meditating. We know that obviously religion can fall under spiritual, and that's for some very meaningful. But really at the basis, what spiritual self-care is finding the meaning in life for you. And that can look like a million different things. So for some, it may be a religious organization. For others, it could be being in nature, or it could be music or inspirational leaders. But we can find our spiritual self-care in a lot of different areas, and we'll talk about it further as we go. And then relationship self-care. What would maybe fall under that? Yeah.
Maybe like gifts for each other and making each other laugh.
Yeah, so showing your love or appreciation for others by doing nice things or giving them nice things. Absolutely. It's really just finding value in relationships that are meaningful to you. For some reason, we tend to hold on to really toxic relationships and are great at fostering those instead of really putting our energy and our value into relationships that are needed or that we appreciate. So whether that's going on date nights or going to events with people you enjoy, scheduling that time with people or making those phone calls, taking that time to visit somebody that you really appreciate, but just really finding the appreciation for some of those relationships you have in your life, whether it's with family or friends or pets. And then workplace and academics, we spend a lot of our time in school or at our workplace. So we also want to make sure that we are doing self-care within this. So this can include taking breaks. It can be talking with peers or coworkers that you really enjoy, setting boundaries, doing professional development, or engaging in professional development opportunities, making your space, whatever that looks like, if it's a cube, an office, making that enjoyable. You're sitting there for 8 hours a day in most cases. So really just finding ways that we can take care of ourselves in those moments. So we're going to dive into these a lot more here in a little bit, but that's kind of an overview of how we will be talking about self-care today. I'm not going to go into much depth here because I think you all know there are benefits to self-care. These are things that research have proven that when we engage in even just a little bit of self-care, we have really positive outcomes. So overall, in our personal health, when people even spend a little bit of time focusing on self-care, they're overall healthier people. They don't get sick as often. We see that they have more energy in their day-to-day life. They also talk about their relationships in a lot more of a positive light. They feel better about who they are, what they're doing in the world, and have a really positive outlook on the future and what's to come. Within workplace or even within school settings, we see that people don't miss as often, that they show up. That could do with being healthier overall. We don't see as much turnover within the workplace, not as many healthcare costs as well. We also see that people report that they're just happier when they engage in self-care. And both with students and adults, we actually see that people are more productive when they engage in self-care, even during those really stressful times. And I think that's really important because I think we always think, well, I'm super stressed out, I don't have time. But there's ways we can integrate self-care, even though during those stressful times, that will actually help with our workload and what we need to get done. So we know there's benefits and we know there's reasons we should do this. But the problem is that we have things get in the way. And so these are two areas that tend to happen to us at one point or another. So the first is overwhelming stress. So we all get stressed out. That's common. That's something that we all feel. And it actually can be a really good motivator for a lot of us. But what tends to happen is that stress level just keeps increasing, and then our motivation drops, and we burn out, we break down. So with overwhelming stress, you can think of this as just too much. There's too much being asked of you, both physically and psychologically, that you can barely keep up. So people in this state we see are kind of all over the place emotionally. They're happy, they're sad, they're angry, they're just kind of bouncing, and it doesn't really make sense. We also see them not be very productive. So they also are bouncing around from project to project or activity to activity without actually getting much done around it. We see that people get sick a lot in this state. And we just see that they're not able to actually get things done because they're just barely keeping their head above water. What tends to happen is we are in overwhelming stress for too long, and then we end up burning out. And burning out is the idea of not having enough. So we just have nothing left in us. We feel really empty. We feel this kind of hopelessness for the future or what's to come. We don't see any hope for positive change in the future. It's kind of just this idea of giving up. We have no more motivation or energy left in us. We know that neither of these areas really benefit us. There's no really benefit to feeling overwhelming stress or burnout. So what we want to do is we want to figure out what are my triggers, what are my warning signs or tipping points when I can notice these, and that's when I really want to start thinking more about my self-care so I can kind of recover from this instead of have this really spiral down in a negative way. So we are going to work on this idea here in a few different ways. The first way we're going to talk about is how we can be preventative. We then are going to talk about ways that we can look at our current self-care habits and hopefully identify ways to improve them, as well as think of the habits you already have and how you're doing well already. And then our kind of takeaway is for you to walk away with at least one self-care habit that you can start doing that's realistic and something that will really improve your life and what you're doing. So the first